The society has changed in the past century. Women 100 years ago were limited in what they could do. They were not allowed to own homes, own credit cards, or even vote. The Museum of Liverpool is hosting a display on women suffragettes of Liverpool.
The Taking Liberties Women's Suffrage in Liverpool display. We developed it with the 1918 Club, which is a local women's organisation which was actually set up by Eleanor Rathbone in 1918 when the Representation of the People Act was introduced. We worked with the ladies. They selected the items from our collections. They wrote the labels to kind of put across the importance of the women's suffrage movement in Liverpool, and there's some really key objects. Scarf, which is one of my favourites. It's a motoring scarf, and it's in colours of the Women's Social Political Union. It's the colours which people normally associate with the suffragette movement, but of course there were the suffragists, which were non-militant campaigners, and the suffragettes, which used violence. So we have the green, purple and white of the WSPU here in the scarf, and we see Votes for Women, which is obviously a well-known slogan for the campaign. This was sold for about 3 shillings. You could buy it mail order or in the WSPU shops. And of course, items like this were sold to raise money for the cause, for the campaign for women to continue fighting. We have various documents here. We have this kind of Christmas message written by a suffragette from the Wirral, Isabel Abraham, and this was actually written on Christmas Day, and you can see very closely that the letterhead has Votes for Women, a little icon in the top there. So she was, even on Christmas Day, she was thinking about spreading the word and sending suffrage message to fellow supporters. We have this beautiful illuminated scroll which was presented to Eleanor Rathbone. She was a suffragist as opposed to a suffragette. She is very well known in the city as a women's campaigner and supporter, and she was instrumental in helping to secure women the vote for the first time in 1918 with the Representation of the People Bill. Obviously there was campaigns right across the country from various different suffrage groups, some using militancy and some using campaigning, but also talking to local politicians, trying to persuade them. For a lot of people, this peaceful campaigning took too long, nothing happened, and that's when deeds, not words, really came in, actions, not talking. Lots of people thought that nothing was going to be achieved, nothing had happened so far after decades and decades of talking to politicians and the Liberal government. Asquith wasn't a supporter of women's rights. So that's when militancy came in. The WSPU was started in Manchester in 1903 with the Pankhursts, and in Liverpool there was the mix of suffragists and suffragettes. In fact, across the city, people planted bombs in pillar boxes, in the Cotton Exchange. Windows were smashed in the Free Trade Hall in Kensington. So there was that mix of campaigning in the city as well. But like I said, Eleanor Rathbone was very much a suffragist. She didn't use the militancy campaign. She was part of the NUWSS, which is the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies. And that was a national organisation, and Liverpool had its own branch. So in 1918, when some women over the age of 30 who owned property, or if their husbands owned property, were given the vote, that was about 40% of women in the country. So it was a landmark bill giving women the vote for the first time, but let's not forget, it wasn't for everyone. People who had campaigned, who had been jailed, who had undergone forcible feeding, some of these people still didn't get the vote after this time if they weren't of the right age or the right class. But this illuminated scroll, this casket and a cheque was presented to Eleanor by the Liverpool Suffrage Society in thanks for what she'd done as heading the organisation, the NUWSS in Liverpool. We have a lovely cat figurine in the middle here. It has Votes for Women around the bottom of the edge. And at first, I think a lot of people's reaction is, oh, isn't that lovely? That's a lovely kind of souvenir of the suffrage campaign. But actually, it can be viewed in two different ways. There were lots of anti-suffrage groups set up by both men and women who didn't want women to have the vote. And a lot of these kind of these campaigns which poked fun at the suffragettes, they used cats to kind of promote this idea of mewing women or vicious women. You'll see in postcards sometimes that the cats are very vicious, and it's kind of this attack of women wanting to remove themselves from that domestic sphere.
The 1918 Club is a discussion forum for women established by Eleanor Rathbone in 1918, which meets regularly in Liverpool. The current exhibition talks prominently about the lives of four pioneer women: Mary Bamber, Bessie Baddock, Eleanor Rathbone, and Kitty Wilson, all four women who have strong links to Liverpool and all individually and actively campaigned for women's rights.
Yeah, I think the way we are as people in society, I think we've achieved a lot in such a short amount of time, like being able to vote and things. However, I still feel like there's a long way to go in terms of having the same rights as men, like the pay gap and stuff. You know, that's just one example.